I moved into my new place just a few weeks after my divorce. At first, the neighborhood seemed nice. The houses looked inviting, and the trees shaded the streets. I thought it would be good to start fresh here. I was looking for peace. What I found was something I never expected. On the third night, I woke up to faint whispering coming from the wall. It was coming from my neighbor's side. I couldn't understand the words. It felt strange, like someone was trying to talk to me but only their voices drifted through. I listened closer, but each time I thought I heard something, it just slipped away. My heart raced. Was I just imagining it? I tried to convince myself it was nothing, but the whispers didn't stop. Each night they grew louder. I started observing my neighbor's house. I noticed a figure standing by the window at odd hours, just staring. I couldn't see his face well, but the glow from inside painted the curtains like a dim veil. I felt cold shivers run down my spine. Was he watching me? I told myself it was in my head. I focused on work, but things didn't get better. The whispers returned every night, but now I also heard laughter, children playing. I could hear it clearly, but I never saw any kids outside. My stomach twisted. Where were these children? I started keeping notes. Every laugh or whisper, I wrote it down. One night I decided to confront my neighbor. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. I waited, tapping my foot nervously. After a few moments, I heard movement inside. I knocked again. The door opened just a crack. My neighbor peered out at me. I felt panic rise. I struggled to find words. I asked him if he could keep the noise down. He didn't say a word, just stared at me. His eyes felt cold. Something wasn't right. I hurried back home, glancing back at him. He was still standing there, watching as I walked away. I couldn't shake the feeling. That night, sleep didn't come. I lay in bed listening to the whispers and the laughter. I felt trapped in confusion and fear. Then one evening I heard the laughter again. This time it was right outside my window. I listened, heart pounding. Suddenly, I saw a shadow move past the glass. I wanted to shut my eyes and pretend it was all in my head, but then I heard it. A soft voice whispering my name. It sent ice through my veins. Was it all in my head? I wanted to tell myself it was. I wanted to think I was just imagining things. But I couldn't shake the unease. The whispers grew more intense and the laughter turned mocking. I felt like something dark was watching me. There was something wrong in this neighborhood, something that I couldn't explain. I thought I would find peace, but instead I found only fear, and it wouldn't let me go. The next day I decided to gather my courage and take a closer look at the neighbor's house. Maybe it was just a strange coincidence, the whispers and shadows. I needed to see for myself. So I set out for a walk, my heart pounding in my chest. As I approached the house, I felt an unsettling chill. The air grew heavy around me. I stopped across the street, pretending to admire the flowers in a nearby garden. But I was really watching. The window where I'd seen the figure was shrouded in the same dim light. It felt like a trap waiting to spring. Just then, a door creaked open. It wasn't the neighbor's front door, but the door leading to the backyard. I squinted to see who stepped outside. It was a woman, hunched over and wearing a long, flowing dress. Her hair fell over her face, hiding her features. She glanced around as if checking for someone. I couldn't take my eyes off her. Then I noticed something strange. In her arms, she held a small bundle. It was too small to be a child, but she cradled it gently, moving closer toward the shadowy corners of her yard. My skin crawled. My imagination raced as I tried to figure out what it could be. I had to know. I waited until she disappeared behind the house. Then curiosity won over my fear. I crossed the street and crept towards the backyard. The fence was low and I managed to peek through a gap. What I saw sent a jolt through my body. It was a small, dark box and the woman was kneeling beside it. She opened it, lifting the bundle gently. I could see now that it was a doll, but not just any doll. It was old and worn, with hollow eyes that seemed to stare right back at me. The woman spoke softly, gathering a few weeds around the box, whispering as though she were performing a ritual. Her words were muffled, but the tone felt haunting. I took a step back, my breath quickening. Was she trying to summon something? Or was it just a strange game? Just then, I felt a presence behind me. I turned, my heart racing. It was my neighbor, the man. He stood just a few feet away, glaring at me with those icy eyes. I stumbled back, caught between flight and fight. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. What was I doing? Why was I watching? I wanted to run, but I was frozen. The whispers filled my mind, drowning out everything else. I could feel their weight bearing down on me, urging me to flee. I took one step back, then another, until I finally turned and ran. I dashed back home, my heart pounding louder than ever. They hadn't followed me, but something deep inside said the worst was yet to come. I locked my doors and collapsed on the couch, staring at the wall, sweat dripping down my forehead. I had to find out what was really happening in the neighborhood. Then, as I caught my breath, I heard it again. A whispered voice, this time clearer and closer than ever. It called my name. Panic flooded me. Who was that? What did they want? Suddenly, my phone buzzed on the table, startling me. I picked it up and saw a message notification. It was from an unknown number. You shouldn't have looked. I felt the blood drain from my face as the silence fell around me like a heavy curtain. I sat on the couch, my mind racing. The air in the room felt charged like before a storm. I was desperate for answers, but dread gnawed at me. I had a choice. I could bury my head in the sand, or confront what I'd seen. I decided to look up the number that messaged me. My hands shook as I typed. I needed to know who was behind it. After a few moments, the screen flashed with the details. No name, just a location. A nearby park that I had visited a few times. My heart sank. It felt like a direct invitation, a trap. I felt a strange pull to go. The whispers in my mind seemed to encourage me, pushing me out the door. I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside. The sky was overcast, adding a suffocating weight to the air. The path to the park was familiar, but each step felt heavy with uncertainty. When I reached the park, it was eerily quiet. The usual sounds of laughter and play were absent. I walked toward the small clearing where I had often sat. That was when I spotted her again, the woman from my neighbor's house. She sat on a bench, her long dress flowing like shadows around her. I froze. Was this a coincidence or a sign? My gut twisted as I approached. She lifted her head, and I could see her face, though her eyes were still obscured by hair. I felt compelled to speak. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. At first there was no answer. She looked past me, scanning the park as if expecting someone. "You shouldn't have looked," she finally replied, her voice a low murmur that sent chills down my spine. "Now they will come for you too." "Who will?" I pressed, but I felt a pulse of fear that made me hesitate. Suddenly I heard footsteps, heavy and deliberate. I glanced over my shoulder. A figure loomed in the distance, stepping into the clearing. It was the man from the house, his face carved into an expression of fury. My heart dropped. This was not the confrontation I wanted. Before I could react, he moved closer, and the woman stood up, shielding me with a hand. "Stay back," she warned, her voice steady but strained. I felt a mix of confusion and protection in her stance. I was in the middle of something that was far beyond my understanding. "What do you want?" I yelled, my voice trembling. "To keep the balance," the man said, his voice cold and emotionless. "You don't belong here." I felt an odd pull of energy, like the tension before a thunderstorm. My instincts screamed for me to run, but I was rooted in place, caught between their stares. That's when I noticed a flicker behind the man. A glint, almost like a shadow coming to life. It raced toward me. A rush of panic surged through me. I couldn't tell what it was, but I felt it had malicious intent. I turned to run, but the ground beneath me shifted. It felt unstable, as if the park itself were alive and pushing me back. In an instant, everything went dark. I blinked, struggling to orient myself. I stumbled, feeling weightless as laughter echoed around me. It was not the laughter of joy, but something sinister, dark. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was no longer alone. Something was watching from the shadows, and I was in deeper than I could have ever imagined. Then I heard a whisper, a familiar voice calling my name, closer than it had ever been before. I stumbled forward, disoriented. The park was gone, replaced by chilling darkness. My heart thudded in my chest, pounding with raw terror. The whisper grew clearer, pulling me like a thread through the void. It was my name, repeated. Was it just in my head, or was someone actually there? "Where are you?" I called out, my voice a feeble echo. There was no light to guide me. I felt like I was floating, suspended between worlds. That's when I caught a glimpse of movement. A shadow, and then another. I held my breath, spine prickling with fear. I could almost make out a form, but my eyes strained against the dark. The laughter continued, intertwining with the whisper. I felt the hairs on my neck stand up. "Help!" I shouted, panic surging. I didn't expect a response, but the shadows paused. They consolidated into a single figure, emerging slowly. It was the woman from the park, but her features were different now, more defined, clearer, and somehow more menacing. "Follow me," she urged, a hint of urgency in her voice. Without thinking, I took a step toward her. I didn't want to be alone anymore. The ground shifted again, this time more solidly beneath me. It felt like a reawakening, each step pulling me back toward some reality. I could see shapes forming, trees, benches, my park returning to view, but it was twisted, distorted. The colors were darker. "What happened to you?" I asked breathlessly. "They are closer than you think," she replied, her voice tinged with desperation. "You have to understand. Once you've seen the truth, there's no going back." "Who are they?" I pressed. I needed answers, but the urgency in her eyes filled me with dread. She opened her mouth to speak, but another figure broke through the shadows. It was the man. Anger radiated from him. "You shouldn't have brought her here," he roared, the temperature dropping in response to his rage. Before I could react, the woman reached for my hand, her grip firm. "You must run," she hissed. Instinct kicked in. I turned on my heel, propelled by fear. We dashed deeper into the park, but it no longer felt like a safe haven. The trees twisted above us, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. Every footfall echoed, signaling our absence in silence. Then I spotted something in the corner of my eye. A glint again, that same flicker from before. This time, it was larger, taking shape behind us. With every turn, I felt the presence closing in. "What is it?" I panted, glancing back at the woman. "Not here, not now," she said, her face pale as she pulled me away from the darkness. We barreled down a path toward what looked like a gate, a flickering exit. I could see a sliver of light, but before we reached it, I heard that laughter again. Now it was joined by another chorus of voices, more whispers, more shadows. Just as we reached the gate, she hesitated. "You must decide," she said, her voice strained. "Stay with me or step through. Choosing either one could change everything." My breath caught in my throat. What did she mean? I glanced back. The man was there, and behind him loomed a mass of darkness. Before I could respond, the shadows surged forward, and the choice I wasn't ready to make was ripped from me. I felt the rush of wind as the shadows enveloped us, pulling me into a whirlpool of darkness. Just as I thought I would be consumed, the world shifted again. Suddenly I stood alone in a long, dim corridor, the echo of the woman's voice fading behind me. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. The air was thick, too quiet. Flickering light bulbs lined the walls, casting eerie patterns that danced in ways I couldn't understand. Each heartbeat felt like an eternity as I nervously stepped forward, glancing over my shoulder. Then I heard it. Small whispers like moths flitting around a flame. The sound was familiar, sent shivers through me. "What do you want?" I asked, anxiety bubbling up. No answer came. Instead, the whispers grew louder, forming a dissonant chant. Suddenly, a door creaked open at the end of the hall, revealing a room bathed in a sickly green light. With hesitant steps, I approached. I peered inside, the vision striking me like a lightning bolt. The walls were covered with photographs, all of different people, neighbors, friends, acquaintances. But they had been altered. Each image displayed terrified expressions, memories frozen in a moment of despair. I felt sick. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered, half to myself. I backed away, wanting to flee, but as I turned, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was her, the woman from the park. Her expression was haunted, eyes wide with a mix of fear and urgency. "You have to listen to me," she exclaimed. "They can't know you're here." "Who?" I gasped, struggling to comprehend. But before she could respond, a low growl rumbled from the corridor behind her. I hesitated, caught between the figure I knew and the threat creeping toward us. "No," she shouted, panicking. "We don't have much time." With her hand outstretched, she pulled me back toward the door. "We need to leave now." I didn't understand what was happening. I felt the ring of fear tighten around my chest, but I followed her instinctively. We rushed into the corridor, the whispers turning into frantic shouts. A flicker of movement caught my eye, and I turned just as another shadow lunged toward us, but it was gone in an instant. "Keep moving," she shouted, urgency in her voice blending with the chaos behind us. I felt adrenaline surge as we sprinted toward the exit, but the growl echoed again, louder this time, shaking the walls. Just then, a photo fell from the wall at my feet. I hesitated, picking it up. It was me, eyes wide, my face twisted in sheer horror. The ground shook violently, and I dropped it, chest tightening with dread. "Why does it look like that?" I cried out, panic rising. "Because it knows you're here," she replied, her voice grave. "They have been watching. You were never meant to come here." As she pulled me forward, I noticed the door ahead was closing, the sliver of light disappearing fast. I lunged toward it, desperate to escape, but the darkness whispered my name again, louder than ever. I could feel it clawing at me, trying to pull me back. Then everything went quiet. And for a brief moment I thought I was safe, but the door was still closing. Whatever lay beyond the threshold was a mystery I was determined to unravel. I sprinted forward, willing myself to reach the light before the darkness pulled me back into its depths. But just as I thought I could make it, I heard a scream, a frantic, heart-wrenching cry that shook my resolve. That's when I saw it. The figure loomed closer, its form twisting in the flickering light. I realized it was not just a shadow, it was something real, something alive. Panic surged through me again, propelling me to the door. My heart raced, and I could hear the pounding of my pulse in my ears. "Go!" the woman screamed, yanking me back from my paralysis. She flung the door open wider, the blinding light washing over us like a wave. But the growl roared again, deep and menacing. I thought about my home, my life outside this nightmare, and the realization that I might never see it again gripped me tight. As we stumbled through the doorway, I felt the cold grip of a hand brush against my shoulder. I turned my head just in time to see a shadowy figure retreat into the dark corridor. I tried to shout, but the words caught in my throat. "Focus," the woman urged, her voice cutting through the panic. "We need to keep moving." We ran into the next room. The walls here were bare except for a single window, its glass milky and clouded. In the dim half-light, I saw files strewn across a rusty metal table. They looked oddly familiar. My heart dropped as I recognized the names on the papers. Each was someone close to me. Old friends, casual acquaintances, and even family members. Their addresses were printed neatly, along with details I never wanted to see written down. "What is this place?" I breathed, glancing at her for answers. "This is where they keep track of everything," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your life, your fears, they know it all." I grabbed a hold of one of the folders, the pages crinkling under my shaking hands. The photograph inside was dated and grainy, but I recognized the moment. It was my 21st birthday, surrounded by friends, laughter echoing in my memory. Yet the people around me wore the same haunting expressions from those photos back in the corridor. "This can't be real," I whispered, inching away from the table. I felt the walls closing in on me. "Why are they doing this?" "Because they feed off your fear," she said. "It gives them power. They use your pain to control you." Suddenly, the shadows in the corner shifted. A figure emerged, much larger than the last, embodying a darkness that seemed alive. I froze, trapped between fright and instinct, as the figure stepped toward us. The faint light cast a monstrous silhouette that tore through my thoughts like a scream. "They're coming for you!" the woman shouted, her urgency jolting me back into action. We darted for the window, the only potential escape route. It was locked, filthy glass thick with grime. I pounded on it, panic rising again, as the shadows closed in behind us, their growls vibrating through the air. "Help me," I begged, desperation spilling out in my every thought. I turned to her, desperation clawing at my throat. "What do I do?" "I'll distract them," she shouted, motioning for me to stand back. "You have to break it. Get out." I watched her step forward, bolting towards the presence as fear raced through my veins. My heart sank, knowing I had to act fast. With one hard thrust, I threw my shoulder into the window. It shattered, sending shards flying everywhere. I stepped back, startled. Then I heard it, a scream. Her terrifying cry echoed around me, and I felt a cold dread settle in. I dove through the broken opening. That's when I realized I had left her behind. I landed hard on the ground outside, the sharp pain in my side jolting me fully awake. My breath came in ragged gasps as I looked back at the shattered window, fearing what I might see. The room was drenched in darkness, and the only evidence of the chaos I had just fled was the sound of something shifting inside. "Get up," I urged myself, forcing my legs to move. I stumbled away from the building, adrenaline flooding my system, pumping life into my limbs. My mind raced, thoughts of the woman flickering in and out. Did she make it out? Was she even alive? The area around me was a twisted version of my neighborhood. The familiar building stood warped and unreal, casting long shadows under a pale moon. The streetlights flickered above, casting a weak glow that barely pierced the night. I darted down an alley, hoping to put distance between me and whatever horrors lurked indoors. As I moved deeper into the darkness, whispers floated through the air like ghosts, snippets of conversations just out of reach. They felt unsettlingly familiar, the voices pulling memories from the back of my mind. I turned sharply, convinced someone was behind me. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice breaking and swallowed by the night. Silence answered. I took another step forward and noticed a flickering light near the end of the alley. It drew me in, a beacon of hope or a trap waiting to ensnare me further. When I reached it, I found a small gathering of my neighbors. They sat in a circle around a glowing barrel fire, their faces illuminated in an eerie way. "Help, please," I shouted, desperate for a sign of safety. But their heads turned slowly to face me. Their expressions were blank, eyes glassy and devoid of recognition. "Join us," one of them said, his voice smooth yet chilling. "We share stories here. You should share yours." The hairs on the back of my neck stood at attention. I hesitated. These were people I had known for years, but they appeared changed, hollow shells of who they once were. "No," I backed away. "I need to get out of here." At that moment, another growl echoed through the alley. The shadows shifted as something large slithered toward me from the depths. "Stay with us," another neighbor urged, their hand stretching forward, almost inviting. I felt the panic return, clawing at my throat. I wasn't ready to die. I turned around and bolted down another path, away from those unsettling faces and their hypnotic voices. My heart raced as I rounded a corner and stumbled into an open street lit under the haunting glow of neon signs. But as I regained my bearings, I skidded to a stop. There, leaning against a lamppost, stood a figure. I squinted. It was someone I used to know, someone long gone. "Why did you leave?" she asked, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. Then everything went dark. I felt the weight of darkness wrap around me like a heavy blanket. It pressed in on all sides, suffocating my breath. I fumbled for a way out, but nothing was familiar. My heart thundered in my ears, drowning out everything else. Then, almost as suddenly as it vanished, the darkness swirled away, leaving me standing on the same street. The neon light still bathed everything in a surreal glow. I blinked, disoriented. The figure was gone. Had she even been there? I turned my head slowly, scanning my surroundings. Shadows danced in the edges of my vision, teasing me with possibilities. The sounds of the barrel fire echoed in my mind, a haunting reminder of the neighbors I'd left behind. They shouldn't have looked that way. Empty. Lost. I needed answers. My feet carried me forward, each step feeling heavier than the last. I stumbled back toward the alley, retracing my path. The whispers were louder now, a chorus of laughter mixed with sorrow. I stopped, the sensation of being watched prickling my skin. "Help me," I whispered to the darkness, hoping some part of me would listen. As I approached the flickering light, I hesitated. This wasn't just any light. It was a signal from those I once called friends. The fire glowed like an ember in a dream, weaving an odd sense of comfort through my fear. Curiosity battled with dread. A figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the glow. It was another neighbor, someone I'd seen every weekend at the park. He moved closer. "You came back." His voice was eerily cheerful. "We were waiting for you." I forced myself to stand tall, but my legs trembled. "What's going on? Why are you all here?" He laughed softly, a sound that felt jarring in the silence. "We remember. You forgot, didn't you? It's okay. We will remind you." My stomach churned. Remind me of what? I wanted to run again, to get as far away from him as possible, but I was rooted to the spot. "What do you mean?" "You're one of us now," he said, his eyes glinting with something I couldn't place. "You chose to leave, but you can come back. We share everything here." Before I could respond, another figure stepped from the darkness. A woman, eyes wide and frantic, her voice shook when she spoke. "Don't let them take you, you have to go." "Why?" I gasped, panic washing over me. "What's happening?" "They'll take your memories," she urged, her voice rising. "You won't even know who you are anymore." The ground beneath me began to buckle, warping my senses. My neighbors started to close in around me, their faces morphing into sinister grins, hollow and empty. I spun. "I want to leave." Panic clawed at me as I pushed my way through the crowd. Their hands reached for me, grasping, pleading with me to stay. "Do you really think you can escape?" the first neighbor asked, his voice echoing deep in my mind. And then I felt it, a sudden cold grip around my ankle. I looked down, eyes widening in horror as I saw the ground peeling back like flesh, darkness seeping through the cracks. "What is happening?" I screamed, wrenching free and sprinting down the alley. That's when I saw it. A door at the end, slightly ajar, beckoning me. I didn't know what lay behind it, but it felt like my only chance. I reached the door and pushed it open without thinking. It creaked loudly, echoing through the stillness behind me. I stumbled into a dimly lit room that smelled stale, as if it hadn't been used in ages. My heart raced as I turned to glance back at the alley. My neighbors were still out there, their eyes piercing through the dark, searching for me. Inside, dust motes floated in the weak light. I felt a chill run down my spine. Something wasn't right, and I could sense it. I quickly closed the door, my breath hitching. It felt like I had just sealed away a part of my past, and that made me uneasy. The room was filled with old furniture, covered in white sheets like ghosts waiting to be uncovered. I moved cautiously, peering past a broken mirror that hung crooked on the wall. The reflection showed me a pale version of myself, eyes wide and terrified. A flicker caught my attention. I turned to find a small lantern on a table, struggling to stay lit. I reached for it, and as my fingers grazed the surface, a flash of light revealed something etched into the wood beneath the lantern. "Beware of the shadows." I pulled my hand back, a jolt of fear coursing through me. What shadows? I strained my ears, listening for any signs of life outside. The whispers had quieted, but I could feel an unsettling energy. It was as if the very walls were alive, listening to my every move. Suddenly, a loud bang rang out from the door. I jerked toward it, the sound shaking me to my core. Someone was trying to get in. I pressed my back against the wall, heart hammering, waiting for the door to burst open. My thoughts raced. Who were my neighbors now? Were they really who I used to know, or had they become something else in my absence? Another crash, this time more insistent. My breath caught in my throat as I weighed my options. I could hide in this room, only to be trapped if they got through. Or I could face them, whatever they had become. I knew I needed to keep moving, so I scanned the room quickly. In the far corner, a small window led outside. Getting out that way felt like my best chance. I rushed to it, fighting against the pounding in my chest. As I reached for the latch, another crash sent a wave of adrenaline coursing through me. The door splintered and buckled, revealing just a sliver of light. I hesitated, thoughts swirling. I didn't know what lay beyond it. Would it be my neighbors, ready to take more from me? I couldn't look back. My choice was made. With a quick turn, I threw open the window and climbed through, dropping down into an unfamiliar yard. The world outside was eerily quiet, more silhouettes than solid shapes in the night. I felt exposed, out in the open, but I had to keep moving. Then I heard a familiar voice, a soft call from somewhere nearby, echoing through the dark. It was the frantic woman I'd encountered before. "This way," she urged, and I could hear the desperation in her tone. I hesitated, heart racing once more. I was being drawn back in. But I didn't have a choice. With a deep breath, I sprinted toward her voice, hoping that maybe, just maybe, she could help me escape the nightmare my life had become. What awaited me now? I followed the voice of the woman, pushing through the thick shadows that threatened to swallow me whole. Every sound set my nerves alight. The rustling leaves, distant thuds, and the faintest echo of laughter. It felt wrong, like every corner held something waiting for me. Finally, I rounded a bend in the overgrown path and saw her, the woman from the park. Her long dress fluttered in the breeze, and her eyes were filled with a mix of hope and fear. "You found me," she said breathlessly, as if her own survival depended on my presence. "Where do we go?" My voice barely broke above a whisper, but she stretched her hand toward me, her grip firm and necessary. "We need to get out of the neighborhood. It's the only way." "Can we even escape?" I asked, a hollow feeling settling in my stomach. It felt like a game of cat and mouse. Would we ever really be free of whatever this was? Her eyes darkened. "They won't let you go. You've seen too much." With that, we broke into a run through the tangled underbrush, each step pulling me deeper into the unknown. But the path twisted and turned like a living entity, and I could hear it. The whispers grew louder, encroaching around us. There was something pursuing us, and I could feel it closing in. I risked a glance behind us, but only shadows danced in the dim light. "Stay focused," she hissed. Her tone sparked determination in me, pushing away the fear that threatened to drown us both. We needed to be somewhere safe, far enough from the prying eyes of neighbors who no longer felt like neighbors. I led the way, my heart pounding in my chest as I navigated toward the nearest road, where perhaps a car could save us. But as we reached the edge of the park, the laughter erupted again, right in front of us. My breath caught as my neighbors emerged from the trees, faces momentarily illuminated in the silvery light. Their expressions were twisted, reflective of something darker than I could comprehend. "Come back," one cried, their voice inviting yet laced with something nefarious. I felt the woman's hand grip mine tighter, a tangible connection grounding me against the chaos surrounding us. "Run!" I yelled. We bolted, weaving among the trees as the laughter grew into a cacophony. Every sound felt like a taunt, echoing around us as shadows chased close behind. We burst through the clearing, where the road lay ahead like a lifeline, and I pushed harder, willing my legs to keep us both moving. But then, just as hope flickered, a thick blackness surged from behind me. I glanced back, eyes widening in disbelief as it coalesced into a mass of shadows, twisting into something almost human. Panic surged. Would we ever be free? "Keep going," she urged, pulling me away as we sprinted onto the road. But the shadows didn't relent. They loomed over us, a storm threatening to engulf everything we sought to escape. Then I saw headlights flickering from a distance. A car. My heart raced with a mix of exhilaration and dread. Would it be salvation or yet another trap? "Drive faster," I beckoned as I raised my hands, waving frantically. But as the vehicle approached, the shadows closed in, dark tendrils reaching out as if to grip me in their grasp. I could almost feel their cold breath against my skin, hot with ire and loss. The car came to a halt, the driver staring wide-eyed from behind the wheel. "Get in!" they shouted, the urgency in their voice palpable. I reached for the door just as one of the shadows lunged toward me. "No, don't!" the woman screamed. In that instant, our eyes met, fear and resolve weaving a silent goodbye. I leapt inside the car, slamming the door shut just as the shadow's hand grazed my shoulder. "Go! Now!" I shouted, the words tumbling out before I could think. The driver floored the accelerator, and we surged forward, the tires screeching against the asphalt. I glanced back. The last thing I saw was the woman, standing there in the glow of the headlights with the shadows swirling around her like an embrace. The neighborhood faded away as we hurtled into the darkness, but even as the headlights pierced the night, a heaviness settled in. Would she be okay? I peeked through the rear window, hoping to catch one last glimpse of her, but only emptiness remained. I leaned back, staring at the void outside, breathless and shaken. The silence inside the car felt oddly comforting, yet the weight of unanswered questions pressed against my chest. What had really happened? Who were those people? I squeezed my eyes shut, still caught between the lives I had before and this hollow existence, unsettled by the remnants of the darkness that lingered in my mind. I wanted to forget, but I knew the truth was still there, lurking, waiting. As the car sped away, I couldn't shake off the whispers. Would they follow me forever? And what did it all mean? I would never know. The world felt divided now, a shadow of normalcy creeping back, while another part remained submerged in deep, haunting night. I moved into the unknown, wondering if I would ever truly escape the neighborhood, and if I would find the courage to face whatever came next.